Pending. Okay, yep, so that recording is now in place. And obviously the recording will be uploaded onto our engage.kalamunda website as well. So I will send an email to everyone afterwards once that link is ready, so you can always watch the recording again also. Just a quick acknowledgement to country. The City of Kalamunda acknowledges the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So just a quick overview of what today will entail. We'll have a quick activity using the Menti platform. I'll quickly run through house rules, and then I'll do a handover to Steph, who will deliver her presentation on the local housing strategy. Then we have time for questions and answers at the very end, and a little quick poll as well, just to get your quick feedback. So if everybody could just get their phones out, if you have them handy, and if you could type in that link, menti.com, and just enter in that code 226829. I'll get it up on my phone too. All right. So you should see the link
again, please. The link.
Sorry, it's yep, it's www.menti, the M for Mary, E, N for Nelly, TI.com.
Right. Thanks.
And then it will ask you to enter a code, which is 226829. And then you can enter, there's a word cloud. So we're just asking you, how are you feeling today? And I can see the word cloud generating there, and it's very positive. Being a Friday, I think everyone seems to be having a positive mindset, so that's awesome. That's fantastic.
Someone in the lobby.
Yeah, I think I've just admitted Brittany.
Cool.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, I might just move forward there. So before we kick off into the presentation, just some brief house rules. If you could mute your mics during the presentation, I will obviously mute you all as well. And if we could leave questions until the end of the presentation, we do have time allocated for that. That would be much appreciated. If at any time during the presentation you have a question and you want to write it down and not forget it, you're always welcome to use that chat function. So if you hover on that little menu in the middle of your screen, there's a show conversation function there. So you're always welcome to type questions in there and chat, and we will relay those questions at the end of the session during the Q&A. During the Q&A, we do ask if one person could speak at a time. It is challenging with online technology. What happens is if there's more than one person speaking, it will cut out the other person's audio feed. So where possible, we'll try and work through the questions one at a time. And I also mention the chat function, but just to remind you that, yes, we will be reading out the comments as they come up at the end for that Q&A. So I might just hand over now to Stephanie Brokenshire. She's our Strategic Planning Officer at the City of Kalamunda and our Young Planner of the Year for Western Australia 2019. She has put a lot of work into this strategy, so she will be able to run through its main key areas, and I'll hand over to you, Steph. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Yeah, thank you for coming on, everyone. I'll just try and share my screen now with you all. Hopefully this works. I think it's actually the other one I'm supposed to be sharing. One moment. Here we go. Okay, are you seeing that one now?
Yep, fantastic work, Steph.
Yep, all good. Okay, excellent. I'll get started then. And if you just want to just make sure that you've got your mics muted now, just so that there's no interference with the audio feed, that would be excellent. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really good to have you here and good to see everyone's in a positive mood as well. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. So this is what the draft local housing strategy looks like. This is the cover page here. I've just added the link below, which takes you straight to the Engage portal on the Kalamunda website. So if you want to have a look at the full document and all of the related information there, that's where you'll find it. So you can click on that link, or you can just put it into your web search bar there. So this map shows basically the whole area of the city of Kalamunda, and the areas in yellow are the properties which are subject to the local housing strategy. So it basically applies to all urban and rural zoned land which has residential housing on it. So those greyed out sections there are state forests, regional reserve, national parks, public open space, and industrial and commercial zoned areas. So they're not included in this local housing strategy study area. It's just focused on mainly residential housing there. So just to give you a little bit of background on this, so the local housing strategy is a sub-strategy which forms part of the larger umbrella local planning strategy. So there's 6 sub-strategies altogether, and we've adopted a number of them. So we've got the public open space strategy, the industrial development strategy, environmental land use planning strategy, which is also known as ELUPS. We've got this housing strategy, which is obviously out for advertising right now. Council just adopted the activity centre strategy for advertising as well. And we've got the rural strategy, which is coming up, which is pending the Pickering Brook task force, which I'll get into that a little bit later as well. So the local planning strategy is basically an umbrella one that sits over the top of all of these sub-strategies. And these sub-strategies have all of the in-depth research and detail to make recommendations. So the local planning strategy is reviewed every 5 years, and that's to align with the review of the local planning scheme, which is basically the scheme is a document which all planners use for statutory planning, and it basically sets out all the planning regulations for the city of Kalamunda. And we've got a local planning strategy. The one that we've got currently was adopted in March 2014. So this new planning strategy, this new housing strategy will replace that one eventually if it's adopted by council. And this one that we've got now, that was adopted in March for advertising. So just to give you an idea of the role of this strategy, so it's a very high level strategic planning document. So it plans for the future growth and the housing needs of the community with additional population and the amount of dwellings that we would need to account for that. And it's not a statutory planning document, so it means it will have no immediate impact on property zoning. So there's a lot of strategies and actions in here to investigate areas for potential rezoning. It doesn't mean that they'll automatically be rezoned. It just means that we've flagged them, and in the future they'll undergo a full review. So that means technical studies, review by council, community engagement, and then another council determination about whether to proceed with them. So there's a very rigorous process to go along for every single strategy and action that's recommended as part of this. This is just sort of a visionary document which sets out the direction for the next 5 years. All right, so just to give you some quick statistics and a bit of background about how we reach some of the recommendations in the strategy. So you can see here, this is the population growth of the city of Kalamunda. It's growing 1% a year. That's a little bit less than what Perth Metropolitan is experiencing, which is 1.7% a year. And then you can see on this graph the population growth and the areas which are likely to experience the largest population growth. So you can see here Forestfield North is expected to be our largest population growth area. It's a very large expanse where we're expecting to get quite high density residential housing in there next to the train station. So that'll be our largest area. and then we've got Forestfield, Kalamunda, and then a couple of the foothills areas. Just as a side note, none of the other investigation areas like Wattle Grove South or Maida Vale South are included in these population projections because it hasn't been determined that they're going to proceed yet. Forestfield North is obviously very high profile, and it's quite far along in the planning process. So that's why that's been included on this one and the other ones haven't. So the City of Kalamunda population is quite diverse, but you can see there is quite an outlier up the top there. We have quite a large demographic of seniors, aged 70 to 84, and we've got a lot of parents and home builders around that 35 to 49 age. So not so many young people and more of the older demographic there. And this one I quite like this stat. So overall, just over 50% of residents are employed within the city, and the other 50% travel elsewhere for work. But the three main industries which people are employed in is agriculture, forestry and fishing, postal and warehousing and transport, and education and training. And this one, I know a few people will be interested in this because aged care is one of the top priorities for the city at the moment, particularly because of our population, our age demographic, as you saw before. It's one of our largest demographics, and so it's something that we have to consider as a priority. So we've calculated that based on a predicted, so they estimate that in 2036 we'll have 1,135 people in non-private dwellings. So it means they'd be in an aged care facility. At the moment we have 243 beds. So that means that between 2020 and 2036 we're going to need an additional 500 to 900 extra aged care beds in the city to account for the future population that would eventually reach the age where they would need that accommodation. And this one, so this just shows the types and diversity of housing that we have in the city. I guess you could say that the housing stock that we have is fairly homogenous. So 93.3% of our housing is separate dwellings, so detached housing. While in the Greater Perth metropolitan region, it's around 75%. So we do have a very typical type of dwelling. And we also have a lot of 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings, while our largest household size is 2-person households. So that means we have a lot of maybe 2-person households living in houses with more bedrooms than they would need, or larger houses than they would need. So that kind of means that we're looking at diversifying housing options, so people have options to downsize or move out, still staying in the same area and around their support networks, but having different housing options to go to. This is a fairly new stat, which wasn't in the last housing strategy. So there's an estimated 78 people currently experiencing homelessness within the city of Kalamunda. So that was based on 2018 statistics, so fairly recent. And I was quite surprised to see that because it's not, I guess, as apparent as it would be where it's more visually apparent if you're, in an inner city area, for example. So I found that statistic quite interesting. And then we also have dual density areas, which are areas which around the shops and activity centres in Forestfield, Maida Vale, High Wycombe and Kalamunda. And those areas were rezoned maybe a year and a half ago. And we're expecting approximately 2,000 additional dwellings and an average of about 5,500 additional people, which will be accounted for in those dual density areas. So housing diversity is one of the key aspects of this strategy. So back in 2018, we actually did a bit of pre-consultation while we were drafting the housing strategy, and it was a great day. So we had a whole bunch of display homes there. These are 6 tiny houses which were towed onto the site so people could have a look around. We had some expert seminars from speakers, specialists in their field. And then we had a whole bunch of stalls. So there was stalls from local businesses, government agencies and community groups, and it was a really good mix of people, and had over 400 visitors there for that one. And so the results of that, we wanted to get people's feedback on what type of innovative housing they wanted to see. You know, did they want to see different creative types of housing? If so, what would they prefer? So what we found was quite astounding is that 96% of respondents would consider living in an alternative housing type. And then the top 4 that they would consider living in, there was a whole range of options that were given in the survey. But the top ones that came up were tiny homes on wheels, micro housing, cooperative housing, and modular housing. So that was based on, we got a total of 77 responses, I think, with the survey and some email submissions. And about 73% of those were residents of the city of Kalamunda. So yeah, it was quite good to get some feedback on that. And we're hoping to get more feedback on that as part of this consultation as well, to see what people would like and, you know, if they like ideas of these new options. So just to kind of give you an idea of what those alternative houses might look like. So this is an example of a tiny house on wheels here. And then we've got this cooperative housing development. This is one which is down in Fremantle, which is built. And, oh, excuse me, go back to that one. And that was designed by the residents for the residents. And they have a lot of shared facilities like artists co-working studios in there, which is really cool. And then we've got sort of modular housing, which is this style, where it's easier for construction methods to kind of deconstruct or construct parts off site and then bring them on. And you can obviously get a bit creative with the green roofs there. And then the micro housing is kind of this style housing in the corner here, similar to a tiny house, but I guess it's on foundation, so it would be, you know, more like a granny flat, I suppose, as well. So granny flats are currently permitted under the building codes and planning regulations. So that one we can actually progress fairly quickly. All right, so now we get into the nitty gritty. So this part's quite important. So we have the Northeast Sub-Regional Planning Framework, which is developed by the Western Australian Planning Commission. And that is a state government document which sets out how many dwellings we should be aiming to build by 2050 so that we can account for the population growth in the city of Kalamunda. So that this 11,450 is the target that we've been set. And so we've considered all of the areas, like given our current population is about 6,032,000. And then our current dwellings are around 60,000. So we looked at areas like our dual density areas, which have already been rezoned and have subdivision potential. We looked at Forestfield North, and then the 2 largest investigation areas which may result in residential housing is Maida Vale South and Wattle Grove South. So obviously, depending on whether they go ahead or not and what the results of those investigation areas are, we've estimated around 7,500 to about 16,000 new dwellings which may result from those. So the median of that would be around 11,789, which is this figure here. So you can tell here it's that median is very close to what the state government target is. So at the moment we're on track to meeting that target. Yeah, but obviously if things happen, you know, if some investigation areas don't go ahead or they don't have the density that we expect, then obviously that figure will change and we can keep track of how we're going with that. All right, so the local housing strategy is a very big document. So I can understand if you don't want to read the whole thing from top to bottom. So what I've done is just broken it down into how the structure of the report is so that you can go straight to the areas that you might be interested in. So I've tried to put the most important things first. So I've put right at the top, we've got the previous actions from the local housing strategy in 2014. So that just summarises what the previous actions were. back in 2014, what's happened to them, whether they've been completed, whether they're still outstanding, and then whether we're still going to pursue it and bring it into the new strategy. And then what I've done underneath that is set out a table of all of the new strategies and actions that we want to complete over the next 5 years. So if you don't have a lot of time and you want to know, at a quick glance what the city is doing over the next 5 years, that's the best way to do it. We have a document which is purely a summary of the strategies and actions, which is online on the Kalamunda Engage portal. So you can have a read through that, and it gives you a really good overview of exactly what we want to achieve. So if you don't have a lot of time, I'd say that's the best place to get the most information in the shortest amount of time. And then we have, so we did a lot of background research and analytics to get to those actions and recommendations. And what we've done is just taken probably the most interesting facts and figures and just done some quick statistics at the top, just for easy reading. The rest of the document then goes into each investigation area, which I'll go through in a second through this presentation. That has a section on innovative housing and also a little bit on heritage there and aged care accommodation. And then right down at the bottom of the document is the appendices, and in the appendices is all of the detail. So all of the statutory documentation, all the analytics, the research methodology, all of the mapping. So if you find something that you're interested in and then want to know how we kind of got to that conclusion and the background data behind it, you can just go straight to the appendices and have a bit more of a detailed read there. So this is just a copy of the vision and objectives from the local housing strategy. I won't go through this in full, it's a lot of writing. So, but yeah, basically the intention is to deliver a range of attractive functional housing types located in close proximity to our shops and our shopping centres, our transport nodes, and we want to cater for a diverse and changing population whilst retaining, really nice, safe and beautiful suburbs for everyone to live in. So that's the vision there, and there is quite a focus on active transport, sustainable features, high quality urban design. We kind of want to transition from having that homogenous housing product to having something that's a little bit more creative and attractive and adds to the character of our neighbourhoods. Okay, so this is another bit of background. I'm just going to go through some of the mapping and how we reached some of the conclusions. This map shows lot size distribution. So you can see these green areas, they're properties which are 1,000 square metres and over. So you can see we do have quite a lot of larger lot sizes here. And then those areas, so the red and the yellow areas are smaller lot size areas. And I'll show you later a picture of our infrastructure and services map, but basically those smaller lot sizes are congregated around areas which have a connection to sewer. So infrastructure is very important for areas where you can subdivide to a higher density. This one shows the age of the housing stock. So when we're looking at areas which may be redeveloped, we do have to look at the age of the housing in that area. So the general lifespan of a typical house is probably 50 to 60 years. So anything pre-1980s is usually coming towards the end of its lifespan. So when you start seeing areas like on this map, it's indicated as the dark red, and those are the areas which are coming towards the end of their lifespan and need to be upgraded, renovated, demolished or replaced. So that rate of renewal is an important consideration when we're looking at areas which may be redeveloped, because when someone's just bought a new piece of land, put a new house on there, they're not likely to demolish that and subdivide and then build 2 new houses. So we're looking at older areas which may be ready for renewal, and then if they have appropriate lot sizes and locations, then potentially that area might be more suitable for redevelopment than other areas. This is a map showing subdivision potential. This is one of my favourite maps because it's really easy to see at a glance kind of where the subdivision potential and development potential is in the city of Kalamunda currently. So this is not based on any investigation areas. This is just based on existing zoning as it stands today. So it's any of these areas highlighted in red, the property has subdivision potential under the current zoning. So we estimate there's about 6,459 properties which have subdivision potential in the city. Some of these larger areas that you might see, they're rural land, and they potentially might want to keep them as larger lot sizes because they have orchards on them, and they look at scale as an important part of production. But then you can see those areas around Forestfield, High Wycombe, Maida, Vale and Kalamunda. That aligns with our dual density areas, which is this next one. So you can see here, Forestfield, Maida Vale, High Wycombe and Kalamunda. And then we've got these maps on the side which show the actual zonings here. And this was part of the previous local housing strategy. It was an action that came out of that. And it's also known as Scheme Amendment 82. And that was passed by council after an extensive community consultation, and these areas around the activity centres were upcoded within walking distance of those town centres. So at the moment, where the current uptake is fairly low, it's fairly slow. We've got about 95 properties, or about 1.6% uptake between 2017 and 2019. So we've done a calculation. So if we base it on around 2% uptake per year, then it may result in around 4,500 dwellings by 2050, about that. So these areas have been rezoned, but it's not likely, you know, it won't happen overnight. It will happen over a very long period of time, gradually, as individual property owners decide they may want to subdivide and develop those. So yeah, as I mentioned before, this is an infrastructure map. So this shows where all the services are located in the city, and you can see right, well, you actually might not be able to see that well. So I don't know if there's those lighter blue areas there. That shows where we have sewerage connection. We have a gravity-fed sewer in the city of Kalamunda. So there's basically the Kalamunda town centre has access to sewer, but not any of the other hills areas, which is why you often see the larger lot sizes there. But yeah, you can see that Forestfield, Maida Vale, High Wycombe, they also have access to sewer there. The areas in blue, that is access to reticulated water, and those areas in yellow don't have access to sewer or reticulated water. They're rural areas. They may just have connection to Western Power there. All right, so now we'll get into investigation areas. These are all in the strategy. Each of these investigations has its own section in the strategy. So if you want to know a bit more background about it, a bit more detail, you can have a look at those in there. This is a really good map, just shows every single investigation area that we currently have, and we're currently looking to investigate as part of this housing strategy. So there's two different types of investigation areas. We've got areas which are set out by the state government, and those are listed in the Northeast Sub-Regional Planning Framework. So we've got 4 within the city of Kalamunda, which is Pickering Brook Town Site, Watergrove South, Maida Vale South and Hillview Golf Course. So to start with, Pickering Brook, this has been going on for a very long time, this one. It was identified in the previous local planning strategy in 2010, which was approved by the state government. On that basis, the city progressed a Metropolitan Region Scheme amendment to rezone the area, but that was then refused by the Western Australian Planning Commission in 2017. So the main issues for refusal were based on priority agricultural areas, public drinking water source areas, bushfire, and that it had no connection to sewer. And so that one sort of came to a screeching halt, but then the community was obviously advocating for it, particularly in that area, they did want to see an expansion to the town site because they'd seen a decline in some of the community facilities, for example. And so in March 2018, which is only about a year after it was refused, this area was identified in the new Northeast Sub-Regional Planning Framework, which was released in 2018. And then the Minister announced the Pickering Brook Task Force, which was announced at the end of 2018, so a couple of months after the framework was released. So now the state government has developed that task force, and they've been working towards doing a lot of technical studies, working with the community. They did a lot of community engagement out there. And so we should be hearing a recommendation coming from that task force probably towards the end of this year. Wattle Grove South, also may be known as Crystal Brook in the future. So this one has also an extensive background history on it. So this was identified in the Northeast Sub-Regional Planning Framework as urban expansion and urban investigation. So it's approximately 350 hectares here. So back in 2018, there was a feasibility study which recommended that the area go light industrial with a bit of residential to the north. So there, as a part of that, they did a lot of community consultation, and it came out very clearly from the community that there was a lot of opposition to having this area as industrial or having any kind of industrial uses there. So in February in 2019, Council did resolve to exclude any general or light industry land uses there. And the city engaged an independent consultant to then undertake comprehensive community consultation and concept planning, which focuses around protecting environmental values and capturing the existing lifestyle opportunities there. So Roberts Day is currently engaged to assist with consultation and preparation of the draft concept plan for this. Yeah, so depending on what comes out of that, that will then go to council, and a determination will be made on what the future of that area will be there. Maida Vale South, this was identified as an urban expansion area. This one will be a privately driven process, so the city won't be undertaking, structure planning and technical studies personally, like we did in Forestfield North or, for example, in Wattle Grove South. So this will be a privately driven developer-led initiative. And there has been sort of whispers about a structure plan coming in probably around the end of this year or early next year. So we haven't received any applications for that area yet, and we're just waiting to see if something comes in. Hillview Golf Course was the last planning investigation area, which was identified by the state government. There wasn't a lot of information about what needed to be worked out with the technical studies on this one, except for that it needed a recreational needs assessment to see if the golf course in a regional context was had an important role. So the state government has over the past year been undertaking technical studies on that, and it's likely we'll get a recommendation provided in late 2020 on that one.
Sorry, Steph, just to let you know, it's about 7 minutes past 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and speed it up then. Okay, so we do have a number of city investigation areas as well, which are not identified by the state government, but areas that the city wants to undertake themselves for redevelopment for whatever reason. So I'll quickly run through those. So for aged care, Cambridge Reserve and Heidelberg Park have been identified as areas which may be suitable for an aged care facility. We obviously need another 500 to 900 additional beds. So these have been progressing on that basis. So it'll be interesting to see what the outcomes of that will be. We have the Glades, which is located up near the Woolworths shopping centre on Canning Road in Kalamunda. This area was previously looked at as part of dual density, but was taken out because the city wanted to undertake more detailed investigation and consultation with those residents to see what type of housing they expected to be there and what they wanted to see happen in that area. This is one of the areas which does have a connection to that gravity-fed sewer if it was extended up. So that one will be investigated in the future. Forest field dual density investigation area. This was part of the dual density investigation area originally, but was taken out. So one of the actions in the strategy is to review dual density areas, monitor their performance, look at any areas which may need to be expanded and included in those dual density areas. So this has been highlighted as one of those. Helendale Road, so this has been ongoing for a number of years. You can see those green areas there are currently rural, and those residential areas are in that sort of creamy pink colour. That's Conti Gardens just next to that, if anyone knows where that is. And then the Wollaston transfer station is up here. So you can see over a long period of time, some areas have been rezoned residential. It's ended up in sort of a patchwork approach to the zoning around here. So we've identified this from the city's point of view because we want a coordinated approach to whatever the zoning outcome will be in this area. So it will be interesting to see kind of what comes out of this. And then we've identified 3 areas which we'll no longer be investigating. And this is because we may get, lots of inquiries about these areas, and we just want to confirm whether or not it will be investigated in the future. This one will not be, even though it was previously included as part of Forestfield North. It's just north of that train station precinct. This area will not be investigated in the future. At least for the next, 5 to 10 years. We do want to see how the uptake of housing within the Forestfield North precinct goes first, because obviously we're on track to meet our housing targets. And, if we have a lot of vacant space within that Forestfield North precinct, there's no reason to really rezone those areas to the north unless those areas have, the market is moving well for those. So that one has been confirmed that's no longer under investigation. Similarly, this one, this area was previously at Scheme Amendment 14, the proposal to rezone that from R2.5 to R5 or R10. It was refused by the Minister in 2017 due to bushfire concerns, because you can see it's surrounded completely by bush here, only one way in, one way out. So that one is confirmed that it will no longer be investigated for rezoning. Similarly, this area, so there was a very large portion of the foothills, which was previously identified in the past local housing strategy for investigation. So not the whole area made it into the North East Sub-Regional Planning Framework, just the Wattle Grove South area and Maida Vale South area did. So we've confirmed that these areas on this map here will no longer be investigated for residential purposes. And that's also because I think it is important to note that while we do, as planners, have to look at increasing density and making sure that we have consolidation, housing close located to our shops and our transport, but we also have to recognise that we do live in a fringe council on the fringe of the metropolitan region, and we are lucky enough to have very large lot sizes and have lifestyle lots close to bushland, close to the hills regions. And having larger lot sizes is also about housing diversity, giving people that option to have that lifestyle lot or also have the convenience of living in a small lot close to town. So that's an important consideration too, I think. So getting towards the end of the presentation here, this is just a summary of the key actions that I think you might be interested in. We have a lot of actions, probably like 2 to 3 pages of actions altogether. These are just the ones which are probably the largest or the most important. So the first one is we are looking to prepare a new local planning scheme, number 4. So our planning scheme number 3, which we're using at the moment, that was adopted back in 2007. It has been gradually updated. There's scheme amendments which keep it updated. But obviously now it's getting to a point where we would like to renew the whole thing and make sure everything is up to date. So that'll be a key action out of this. We also want to review the performance of dual density areas, as I mentioned before. We do want to improve public and active transport options. So that means not just relying on cars as our primary transport option, but looking at improving those connections to public transport, to the train station and the bus links to the shops. And then also emphasising good pedestrian links and cycle links, so you can have those active transport options as well. And then we also have an action there to update the Municipal Heritage Inventory. The Heritage Act was reviewed and updated in 2018. So we just need to make sure ours is consistent with the new Act and then add any additional heritage places on there. And then we have an action to develop a policy to incentivise sustainable housing features. So things like solar, rainwater tanks, biophilic design, zero waste construction. One of the actions is to look at that and see how council can support and incentivise that type of housing. And then we've got obviously the option to support innovative housing options, to introduce a policy and or scheme provisions, to look at creating a diversity of housing, so to meet the changing population that we're going to experience. And then we've got, this is probably one of the most interesting ones as well, a very large action, which may take some time. So normalising local structure plans. So just if you want to have a full list of the actions, you can get a copy of that on the Kalamunda Engage portal on the website, so you can have a full list there. But I'll just quickly explain what this normalising local structure plans is, because it is slightly complex. So when you have a property, it will usually have two zones. It will have the state government zoning, which will be something like urban, and then you'll have the local planning scheme zoning, which would be something like residential R20, for example. And then sometimes if you have larger areas which need to be redeveloped, like very, very large, you know, we're talking probably 300 hectares or something, they may have a need to coordinate roads, to coordinate sewerage, public open space, and even look at lot configuration or design features so that housing is facing onto public open space, for example. So in that case, we would usually introduce a structure plan. So we currently have 13 active structure plans and 18 local development plans. So what you would get in some areas is you would have the state zoning, which is urban. You would have the local zoning, which may be urban development. You'd have the structure plan zoning, which may be residential. And then on top of that, you might even have an LDP, which then has residential R20, for example. So we wanted to streamline this. We wanted to simplify the planning process. Obviously, it would be a lot more complex to put a development application in these areas when you have so many different layers of planning to consider. So the areas which are old and outdated, 95% of the structure plan area might be developed and there's just 2 lots remaining. So we're looking at removing the structure plan and translating the zone into our local planning scheme zone. So it will only have 2 layers of planning there instead. So it will simplify it and hopefully streamline the approval process. And I'm quite excited about this because we don't just want to introduce more things to make things more complicated. We also want to make things easier and simplify them for people. So this is my last slide here. So overall, the local housing strategy doesn't have huge changes. There's no major rezoning proposed. There are those actions for those investigation areas to continue progressing investigations and technical studies and community engagement in those areas. But overall, there's no major rezoning proposed outside of those areas in this housing strategy. And obviously those investigation areas will happen over a very long period of time, you know, over the next 5, 10, 20 years. They're not going to all happen at once. And as you know, the planning process can be fairly slow, so it will be a gradual process, and you'll have opportunities to comment during pre-consultation, during public advertising, and then all at visitations at council when they're looking at deciding on these matters. And we're also updating our scheme, our policies and our structure plans so that we can streamline and simplify our approval process. It does have more of an emphasis on environmentally friendly development and active transport. So that was a large feature of this housing strategy. We focus on innovative housing diversity, and then also one of our priorities remains as progressing aged care projects there. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. Thank you all for sticking with us. It's a lot to take in. So yeah, please put your questions in the chat, or you can unmute and just let me know what you're thinking if you have any burning questions about anything we've discussed. Yeah, so we can go ahead now and do the questions, and then I'll pass you on to Kat, who can do the Mentimeter survey at the end.
Thank you so much, Steph. Like we said before, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in Mentimeter. Otherwise, I can see that there are some comments coming through that chat channel as well.
Yep.
Or you can ask a question verbally here too. I might just do a quick recap of the questions that we've had in chat for those that haven't seen it. So we've had a few questions. Michael had a question about the availability of sewer in the town centre of Kalamunda. But that was clarified with Steph's amendment in her comment there. Also, we had another question here about what is dual density zoning and protection for remnant natural environment in the Maida Vale South area. So Nicole has provided a link there if anyone wants more information on that dual density. So that's on our Kalamunda website. And Chris has also provided some clarity there as to how that dual density applies. In terms of, there was a question about Heidelberg Park. So Chris, did you put a response into that one? It was, oh yes, sorry, it was not part of the regional framework, but it is proposed by state government to undertake a region scheme amendment.
Yeah.
And also just trying to make sure I cover up on that last question there. So the environment in regards to environmental protection. So this was a question from Katrina. There are a number of technical required technical studies before determinations are made before any changes to the land uses. So like I said, feel free to put in more questions into that chat channel. I think someone's asked for a copy of your presentation, Steph. That question came through on Mentimeter.
Yeah, so I imagine this recording will be put on the website later so people can view it later. So you can go and have a look at the slides again and listen to my explanation. But I think we can upload a copy of the presentation as well, Kat. Maybe we can discuss that afterwards.
Yes, we can. Yep. Yeah, so the recording will definitely, I anticipate to do that hopefully by the end of today. So what I'll do is I'll email everyone that had registered for this online session, and they will have a direct link to that recording. So yeah, you should get a copy of that very soon. So I think Lynn had a question. Has there been any overlay done in the housing strategy risk management plan?
The Department of Fire and Emergency Services has a bushfire risk plan. So they have areas which they've noted as bushfire prone, and then individual landowners will go in and provide a bushfire attack level assessment. So there's we don't do an overarching one over the whole of the city of Kalamunda. That's done by DFIS, and then it's up to individual landowners to manage the risk as it applies to their property. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks so much, Steph. And we've just got another question here from Kevin. How closely do the city planners work with WAPC, the WA Planning Commission, regarding meeting housing density quota?
Well, I guess it's something that we have to consider as part of all of our strategic planning. So the targets are set by the state government, and then that has to filter down into our housing strategy and our planning strategy. And then from there, we have to do our own investigations and our own works and projects to make sure that that target is met. And then obviously it's considered with any proposals like MRS amendments or local planning scheme amendments that we put to the state government. So they would have to consider that as part of their assessments as well.
Did anyone have a question that they would like to ask verbally if they wanted to turn their mics off? I'll give people a moment just to work that out. We've got another question from Lynn as well. But what if the city-owned land affects adjacent development sites?
Yep. Yeah, so that's all taken into account when you do a bushfire attack level assessment. So the bushfire consultant will rate the vegetation and then look at the buffer distances you need from that vegetation. So you can't obviously manage any vegetation which is not on your land. So that's all taken into account when the bushfire consultant does an assessment on a property.
Thanks, Steph. Any questions from the group? Anyone want to jump on their mic and ask a question?
Okay, Malcolm here. I've tried to send you a message, and basically what it's saying is the City of Kalamunda has made a decision in the past with regard to aged care developments not to actually participate in the sense of developing themselves or running them. I understand that, but is there a specific plan about how you're going to make sure that these things, the targets are met, in terms of making sure there's redevelopment as you're doing at the moment with Cambridge and Heidelberg, say, probably, but then having got that rezoned, if that's the word, then promoting them actively to the market and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we do liaise with aged care providers throughout the whole project process. Obviously, don't want to rezone an area of land and then have no one who's interested in developing it for aged care. So, yeah, we do liaise with them beforehand, but obviously it does go out to a competitive process at the end of the day, and whoever whoever's interested in then progressing it then has to let the city know.
Okay, thanks. That's all right.
Just got a question here, another question from Michael. With the state government instigating a rezoning of Heidelberg Park, how come they are not required to undertake consultation with the neighbours? This did not happen. Surely the same rules should apply.
So with Heidelberg Park, there was pre-consultation done. So that was done probably end of last year, I think it was. And we got a lot of good feedback on that. And so those details have been given, I believe, to the state government. And then it will also be advertised if there's any other stage in the process. So if there's a zoning application, that's then advertised by the state government as well. So the landowners surrounding there will be notified.
I might jump in there, Steph, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So this is Chris Lodge from the City of Kalamunda. There is a Metropolitan Region Scheme amendment which is being considered by the West Australian Planning Commission in May next week. That's to initiate a Metropolitan Region Scheme amendment. There is consultation that's undertaken as part of that process. It's a statutory process, so there will be engagement with landowners.
Sorry, if I can just make an additional comment there. It's Nick from the community engagement team for Michael and listeners. Just to confirm that there are a number of steps and that significant consultation will actually still need to take place, and that the city certainly encourages landowners to partake in that consultation process.
So we'll be contacted, Nicole and Chris?
Correct.
And that's as soon as this month?
No.
We don't know if they do consider it in May, then from there they would then need to commence their advertising period. It could be as soon as this month, but it may take them a couple of months to actually initiate that process. It would be something that the city also advertised. So as soon as we see anything like that come out from the state government, we tend to take quite an active role in making sure that community members are aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We've got another question from Lynn. How does one get in touch with the community engagement team? Well, you can call us at any time, so on 9257 9999, or you can email us through inquiries@kalamunda.wa.gov.au. So I'm Katrina, I'm the community engagement specialist, and I also job share with Jessie McLaren, who's our other community engagement specialist as well at the city. So now you've got my name as well, so you're always welcome to call up and ask to speak to the community engagement team. And if you haven't already seen our website, well, most of you already have because you would have registered through there. All of our information is always up on engage.wa.kalamunda as well in terms of projects that we have out for public comment. So are there any other questions from the group?
Let's keep going, Kat. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think there was one question we might have missed. Michael asked us a question regarding the glades and how long that might take. Was that answered, Michael, or did you still need an answer to that one?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for picking that one up. No, it hasn't been answered yet. As I said in my comment, I put in various submissions for 2005 and 2011 about the Kalamunda Glades area and precinct, but unfortunately has not made it onto the planning scheme amendments. So it's now an investigation area, and so I'm interested in hearing about when that might actually start, considering Stephanie's comment that some of these investigation areas may be happening over the next 10 or 20 years. I'm concerned that we've already been 15 years since I've raised it.
Yep, certainly. I know that there's been a number of landowners who've been interested in rezoning in that area, hence why it's been picked up through this process. We do need to undertake a preliminary engagement process with all landowners in that investigation area that's been identified. We need to establish a vision around what kind of densities or development product that both landowners and the city might like to see there. That'll likely occur in the coming 12 months. So it'll be on the agenda. That'll then move into a decision of likely a decision of council as to how planning progresses in that area, whether or not the city initiates an amendment or whether there's landowners interested in initiating an amendment. Those things will be undertaken as part of the investigation process identified through this strategy.
And if I can just jump in here, there's also on the summary of strategies and actions in the housing strategy, they've got short, medium or long-term priority on them as well. So you can check that out, and that will give you an idea of what the priority sits, where the priority sits in respect to the other project areas.
Thanks, Stephanie. I have it open. I didn't note that on the report. If you can let me know what page, even if it's a message, that would be helpful. I'll have another look.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I think we've just got one more question from Lynn. What was the average age of respondents to the Innovative Housing Survey? Steph, do you recall off the top of your head, or that's definitely something that we can pull up for later, Lynn, and I can circulate that after this session?
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, I think it was around between 30 and 50. I think there wasn't so many older respondents. I was quite surprised because I thought they'd be interested in that aged care component. So yeah, I think it was around that demographic.
Thanks, Steph. We'll pull that those stats up, Lynn, and we can circulate those to you as well. All right, well, I might just move forward then. So hopefully on Menti, you would have seen the survey come up, just how would you rate the strategy area? So it looks like I've got a couple of responses on there already. So if everybody could please grab out their smartphones, and you should see that slide come up, and then you can plug in your answers on your mobile phone there.
Nice work, everyone. That's awesome. And of course, you can also jump on the engagement portal and complete the survey at any time as well if you haven't already done that, or if you would like a hard copy version, then we can also supply one for you. But it's fantastic to see so much feedback coming in.
Sorry, could you please explain what that question means?
So are you referring to the strategy areas?
Yeah,
Yep.
how would you rate
So in the doc,
areas?
Yep. So in the document, and Steph might be able to further elaborate on this as well, they have the 5 strategy areas, and under those strategy areas, they have a number of actions and implementation for delivery. So Steph, I don't know if you want to chime in and just quickly give an overview. Yep.
Yeah, so you can find, it's just a table, and it's got the objectives, the strategy, and then the action that we want to take. And then in the right-hand column, we've got the priority and then what the departments involved would be. So it's just a table that's set out. It's in the full housing strategy document, more towards the top section. But we also have extracted that one table, and we've made it as a separate document on the Engage portal website. So you can access just the summary there as well.
Thank you.
No worries.
So I might move on to the next slide. So we've had about 6. I don't know if there's anyone else that would like to quickly put in a rating, but there's about 6 responses so far for this slide.
No, I don't think I'd get through on mine. I'll do it online.
Yep. No worries. I might move on then. So just to the next slide. What word? So this is another word cloud. What word would you use to describe the local housing strategy? So if you could just try and capture it in one word, and let's see what we get. So at the moment, we've got comprehensive, detailed, large collaboration. I think that's testament to the amount of work that you've put into this document. Formative, interesting, detailed seems to be popular. Transformative, complex, extensive. That's so awesome, guys. Thank you so much. And I might just move on to how would you rate your satisfaction with this online information session? So this has been a bit of a trial for us. This is one of the first information sessions we've done online with the development of everything recently. So we would love to get your feedback on how this was for you, the pacing and timing, the depth of information, your overall experience. Would you like to see us deliver more of these in the future? Feel free to pop those comments in the chat as well. That's awesome. That's what I like to see. Right. Thank you so much. It seems like we've it's been a positive session this morning, so that's really pleasing to see. So I might just move on to that very last slide. So if you have any other comments, feel free. I might just actually skip this. Feel free to chuck them in the chat, because I just want to go move on to the next step. So if you haven't already, please complete the online survey. So that's available at engage.kalamunda.wa.gov.au. It's under local housing strategy. We have lots of time, plenty of time until it closes. So the survey does not close until the 29th of March. So I encourage you to please jump on there, complete it if you haven't done so already. If you know of anyone else that would be interested in completing it, feel free to forward it on to them as well. And we do look forward to getting all of your feedback and reviewing that. So I might just turn off my screen sharing for now and just Steph or Chris or Nicole, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add before we close this session today.
I would just like to really thank everyone who's joined in on behalf of the City of Kalamunda. I know that using new technology can be a little bit daunting, particularly for such a large group session like this. But from our point of view, it's really important to us to still be able to have that one-on-one connection and that really interactive feel to all of our community engagement that is being undertaken at this time as we move through COVID-19. So a really big thanks from us. And of course, as Kat said, please do make a submission and remind your friends and your family to jump on and have their say, because the city does often find that at the end of these processes, people say, oh, why is it like this? Or how come no one ever raised X or Y? And that's where you guys are so important. You've got that on-ground knowledge, and we really do need to hear from you on this particular strategy.
Yeah, and if you have any detailed questions about, you know, any specific section of a housing strategy, or if you just wanted a little bit more of an explanation about, you know, different areas, feel free to just email us at inquiries or call through. I'm always happy to talk to anyone about anything in the housing strategy or any planning related project. So yeah, just let us know. We're always here to have a chat.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along today, for giving us your time this morning. We hope you have an amazing Friday and weekend, and we'll send through a summary of what happened this morning by the end of today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Very good.